Good afternoon and welcome to the City Club of Cleveland. I'm Dan Moulthrop, Chief Executive here at the City Club and a proud member. It's my pleasure to introduce our speaker today, decorated former naval officer, inspirational speaker, author, entrepreneur, and advocate for healthcare patients worldwide, Mr. Montel Williams. Mr. Williams began his professional career in the U.S. Marine Corps and was the first black Marine selected to the Naval Academy Prep School to then go on to graduate from the United States Naval Academy. While serving in the military, Williams was the recipient of 2 Meritorious Service Medals, 2 Navy Commendation Medals, and 2 Navy Achievement Medals. Mr. Williams also had his first health scare while in the military. At the age of 19, he was erroneously diagnosed with breast cancer and underwent a double mastectomy. The tumors were later determined to be benign. Mr. Williams gained his celebrity status hosting The Montel Williams Show, a nationally syndicated talk show distributed by CBS for 17 years, during which time he taped more than 3,500 shows and interviewed more than 30,000 guests. Now, I've interviewed a lot of people in my career, but nothing like that. My hat is off to you, sir. In 1999, Mr. Williams' life was irrevocably changed after being diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. Deciding to become an advocate for those living with this debilitating disease, he established the Montel Williams MS Foundation, which has raised more than $1.5 million for MS research. He is also involved in the work of 2 medical device companies. According to the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control, as of 2012, approximately half of all adults, 117 million people in the United States, have 1 or more chronic health conditions. 7 of the top 10 causes of death in 2010 were related to chronic diseases. Mr. Williams argues that Americans should spend more time taking charge of their own health rather than relying solely on healthcare professionals to do the work for them. I have MS, he said in a recent interview with Cleveland.com, but MS doesn't have me and will never have me. Through his Living Well with Montel brand and series of books, multiple bestsellers, by the way, Mr. Williams encourages individuals to know themselves and pay attention to their own specific health needs, and to do that rather than the more superficial concerns that society often deems important. Having spoken to Mr. Williams in the green room, I expect we're going to hear quite a lot about that today. He believes that women in particular should focus more on becoming their own healthcare advocates, as their needs are often curtailed in favor of their family's well-being. Ladies and gentlemen, friends and members of the City Club of Cleveland, it's my pleasure to introduce to you today Mr. Montel Williams.
Thank you. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Please, thank you. I have to start off by saying thank you to the City Club and also to Cleveland Clinic, to Mr. Dan Moulthrop and Dr. Bradley. Thank you so much for inviting me here. For people who are like myself, who are speakers, some of you may not know this, but for us, the City Club is one of the pinnacle places in the world to speak. And for me to be invited here today and now be listed with the list of luminaries that I read last night who have spoken before me, I can't tell you thank you enough for this opportunity to be here. This is really something that may be important to me, to you. Believe me, it is. So thank you. It's one. Mr. Moulthrop was absolutely correct. I started thinking about this speech when you guys called me, and when the Cleveland Clinic called and said, "Montel, will you come and speak to the Cleveland Club, to the City Club?" I said, "Yeah." And as I looked at the list and I started noticing and recognizing the people who had spoken before me, I recognized that every one of them who has come here has probably decided to pick the issue of the day, and then they were going to elucidate that for you and talk about it, bring you up to speed, and you'd all walk away being a little bit better educated and be able to converse about that single issue. I started thinking about what I'm going to talk about today, and I started thinking about what issues should I talk about? What's issues facing America? Really? Let's start. How about I talk about Russia? How about I talk about North Korea? How about I talk about Pakistan, Afghanistan? How about I talk about Iran, Iraq? How about I talk about the Middle East, the Middle East, the Middle East? How about I talk about ISIS? How about I talk about the Middle East some more? How about I talk about Somalia? How about I talk about Sudan? How about I talk about let's bring it home. How about I talk about immigration? How about I talk about lack of health care? How about I talk about disparity between employment and payment? How about I talk about racism, sexism? Which issue do I talk about today? And as I thought about it, I said, maybe what I could do is take this opportunity to use this prestigious organization to help see if we can spark some conversation in America that is completely missing in our now reality-based society. And what I mean by a reality-based society is I'm talking from the top down, from the president to Congress to the Senate to our elected officials to, in some ways, and I'm not going to say and point fingers at anyone at the Cleveland Clinic, but some of our doctors and some of our administrators. I mean, when I started really thinking about how am I going to see if I can spark some conversation, then I should talk about the issues that are near and dearest to my heart. And those are the issues of healthcare. And just like Mr. Montel has pointed out, I don't know why the universe set it up this way, but my entire life has been spent in medical issues. And as I look back at it, I can recognize, I mean, let me tell you, when I was a child, my mother used to say, it's really crazy, they literally had a room for me in the hospital in Baltimore. I went to the hospital for something stupid, I'm telling you, sometimes once a week. Here's Montel. I'm the kid who ran with a stick in his mouth. Boom, fall down, almost punch it through the back of his throat. I'm the kid who almost everybody, all the other kids in the neighborhood used to like me because I fell down good. So if they pushed me, it was always going to be dramatic. So therefore, the blood, other stuff, push Montel. Okay? I grew up in an area of the country, Baltimore, and was born and raised in the poorest area of Baltimore, which is called Cherry Hill, which was an area of the first hazardous cleanup site. When we put together the cleanup site money, was to clean up Bethlehem Steel. I was born and raised about 4 blocks from Bethlehem Steel. The city dump was less than a block away from my house. When I was a child, the older kids used to make us run through the trash at the front to see if we could chase some of the rats out so they could shoot them with BB guns. I wonder now why I have MS. Okay? We'll go back to that in a minute. So as I looked at my life, as I grew up, as a kid, high school, broke arm, did this, you know, I was always breaking something, okay? Going to the military, breaking something. When I went in the military, though, as soon as I went in the Naval Academy, started to realize that there were some things that had happened in my earlier development that, you know, I wasn't going to get away from. And though we identified the fact that I was diagnosed with MS in the year 2000, I should have been diagnosed with MS in the year 1979 at the United States Naval Academy, because that's where I had my first bout, clearly shown. But because at the time I was a 6 foot tall African American male weighing about 220 pounds, I was a professor, I was a bodybuilder, a weightlifter, I go to see the doctor, it's impossible for me to have MS. Couldn't have it. So only back then, MS was a disease that was only diagnosed of Caucasian women of Northern European descent. It wasn't until Richard Pryor was diagnosed that somebody started to think that, oh, maybe this happens in other places, even though the world already knew it. So my MS started back then. I was misdiagnosed for 20 years. It wasn't until 2000 that a doctor finally diagnosed me correctly. Now, so I'm dealing with that issue, and I'm going to tell you, it was tough. When I was first diagnosed, I believed all the things that was written about this disease and believed them, took them to heart. I went up online, started studying. Well, first thing I found out that African American males with MS, we are the worst group, period. I have right now automatically a 15% reduction in my life expectancy, 15%. And if I believe the hype about that, that means that if with my 15% reduction in my overall lifetime expectancy, right now African American males have a lifetime expectancy of, somebody, depends on which report you mean, either 70 or 71. A couple of them are saying 69. So if it's 69, oh my God, I'm not going to buy that one. Let's go 70, 71. Take away 15% of 70, 71, that's about 10 years. That means that 71, that means 61. I'm 58. That means I'm supposed to die in 3 years because I have MS. And if I'm going to believe that, then I would live down to that and probably be right there, right now, laying in a wheelchair or laying in a bed, not able to move because I believe what somebody told me, that I have MS, so therefore these things have to happen. And I'm going to tell you, I started figuring out that maybe somebody's not telling the truth completely about this whole issue about how can we individually impact the way we feel. So, I would not have been able to even think about how I am going to deal with MS individually had I not understood a little mantra that literally has been my savior my entire life. And that is what is on that paper there in front of you, which is the title of my speech. It's really not the title, but the title. And it says, who owns the definition of who you are? Well, I got to explain where this comes from for you to understand that this and that term itself, who owns a definition of who you are, is the term and the phrase that has driven me my entire life. Because I'm the person who owns the definition of who I am. And why? I'm going to take you on a little journey. I'll go way back for a second. How was I a kid who was the first African American to go through the Naval Academy Prep School, graduate from the Naval Academy, and go on to be an officer in the military? How was I capable of doing this? Born in the ghetto, because if you listen to the hype, I'm supposed to be dead or in jail. And as a matter of fact, when I've gone back to visit my own community, I'm only one of 3 of the 14 males born in my month in my community that's still alive. So, I was lucky. I have 2 parents at home, and I'm going to say I was lucky. My 2 parents, 3 years old. My father at 83 is a sitting tax judge. My father spent 20 years of his life going to night school twice a week to earn his bachelor's degree. When I was growing up, I was born in this very poor setting. My father demanded one thing of me, and I know we got some students over here, and I'm going to talk to you about this real quick to explain something to you. My father demanded of all of us, number one, as a baby, I'm telling you what I can remember when I was holding the bottle, I remember him saying, your job is to get the education that I'm earning this money for. I remember those words. I'm telling you. When we were children, I'm the youngest of 4. I have 3 older siblings. They all went to school before me. My dad was a shift worker for the fire department, so he worked a mid, even a day. You know what I'm talking about? 8, right? We only got to see my father 4 days out of every 15. Those 4 days were when it was the dinner meal, when he worked and came home for dinner. He demanded that the 4 children sit at that table with him for dinner for all 4 meals. Watch this. The requirement of my father was each one of the kids had to come to the table with 4 words that they could spell, use in a sentence, and recite the Webster's Dictionary definition of. I was the baby. My older siblings are 6 or 7 years older than me. They started going to school. When I was 3, I would sit at that table, and my father would look at me and expect me to have 4 words. I'm not kidding. My older siblings made sure I had those 4 words, because if they didn't do so, the whole different time we live in now. Back then, I lived with parents and a father who believed in you can't spare the rod. So you knew at that table the rod was coming if you didn't have those 4 words. So now you have to understand, why am I who I am today? From the time I was 3 to the time I entered school, I had a vocabulary of a 12th grader. Seriously. I walked into my elementary school, and I should back up and tell you, I'm a product of busing. So when I was a child, my black community, Glen Burnie, or Morris Hill, got bused to school 14 miles away to an all-white school. And this was in 1962, 63, 64, when people were standing outside with sticks and protesting our appearance in the school. So, I go to school, I'm a little bit ahead of all of my peers because I have this father who's already kind of pre-trained me. So what ends up happening? I go to school, I was able to, in the 1st and 2nd grade, this is the truth, I was able to write stories. I could write a story. All the other kids trying to figure out how to put ABC together, homeboys sitting here writing little stories. So in my county, which was Anne Arundel County in Maryland, they had a radio station that used to really support schools, and so the radio station would once a week select a story or something written by a student in the county, and they would read it. Well, you don't know what happened. From the time I was in the 2nd grade to about the 3rd grade, I had about 5 of my stories read on the radio. Boo! Come on now, this is my whole school. Nobody else in the whole school, little black kid. This is race. His story right on the radio. So I'm doing this, and every year, second grade, it was good. The stories are getting better, right? Third grade, I'm knowing a little bit more. Stories are getting better, right? So my third grade year, they had read one on the radio for Halloween. I was like walking in the hallways. So I was going to write the best story I could write because I knew it was going to be the Christmas winner. I don't care how many kids submit, I'm winning this. So I wrote the story. You ready? My story was, my mother wanted me to go to the store. No, I had my money, save up my money. I was going to go buy presents for my siblings and my parents. So I went to the store, and back then we had this little store near us. There was a B-Mart. It's a really weird little store, B something. Right? So I went up to B-Mart, and I shopped. I had maybe $14. And I bought everybody, my mom, my father, my sisters, and my brother, a present. Reached in my pocket, had $1 left. So I went down to the area where they were going to wrap the gifts, and I asked the lady, can you wrap these gifts for $1? And she said, no. So I said, well, can I do this? I'll clean up the floor all day if you wrap my gifts. And she said, okay. So I cleaned up the floor, put my gifts up on the counter. She wrapped all my gifts. I took my gifts home. I put them under the tree. Wow, big Christmas. That was a good story, right? I was in third grade, I wrote that. That was good, right? Okay, so I'll submit that story to my teacher. The teacher gets a story. She, I'm waiting in class to get the grades back the next day. I'm sitting over here like this. My paper comes back, and just like one of the bad B-roll movies that you see, my paper comes back is a big red F on my paper with a circle on it. And there's a word circled throughout the paper. Now, I should back up and tell you something. At this point here, I'm a quick learner. You come home with anything less than an A, spare the rod. Homeboy never had anything less than an A, ever. I have an F. I'm now contemplating at the third grade suicide, jumping in front of a bus. I don't really know what to do, because if I show my father this paper, I'm dead. So I hide it. I took that paper home, I hid that paper. 2 days. Took that paper out, and I'll tell you where I used to hide stuff, in between my mattress and box springs. Okay? So I'd stick it in there. Took it out. I took it back to school because I don't understand what's going on. I take it in, I go to see the teacher. And I say, I'm sorry, I don't know what's wrong. This woman looked me in the face that day, and she said, let me give you a look. She went, I'll show you guys too. She went, you don't know what's wrong? This is why you people will never be anything in life. She threw that paper back at me. I took it. I was like, what are you talking about? I took it home. I hid it again between my mattress and box springs. I hid that paper for the next 3 years because I couldn't figure it out. Remember, I was in the third grade. Third grade, you can write. You really don't understand what you read. Sixth grade, I could understand what I was reading. I misspelled one word in that paper, and that woman said to me, that's the reason why you people will never be anything in life. Which word did I misspell in that paper? I said it to you enough that everybody in this room could be able to pick it. Which word? Don't know? Just throw one out, huh?
Wrap.
Thank you. I spelled the word wrapped, R-A-P-E-D, instead of W-R-A-P-P-E-D. And a teacher looked me in the face and said, that's the reason why you people will never be anything in life. When I realized how to read a dictionary and understood what the word rape meant in the 6th grade, I realized that this woman was trying to condemn me for the rest of my life based on the color of my skin. Let me tell you what happened. It's the worst thing she could have done because she unleashed the hound. From that moment on, I have lived my life until recently, last 5 years ago, I had to go to therapy over this because I'm so driven to prove her wrong. So what do? I leave that elementary school. I go on to Andover High School. I become the president of my class 2 years in a row. I become a student on the Board of Education my senior year. I became the president of the Maryland Association of Student Councils, the parliamentarian of the Maryland Association or the Chesapeake Regional Association of Student Councils. I go on to enlist in the Marine Corps. I get selected immediately to go to the Naval Academy. I go to the Naval Academy, I graduate. I came out with a degree in general engineering and a minor in international security affairs. My language at the Naval Academy was Chinese. I left there and went to the Defense Language Institute. I have a degree in Russian. I left there and went to the National Cryptological School. I have a degree in cryptology. I served for the next 14 years straight active duty as a cryptological officer. I about 600 days at sea, 300 of which is under the water, supporting and defending this democracy. But I left there. When my show stopped, or when my military career stopped, I started a nonprofit organization that was called Reach the American Dream, where I went around this country for 3 years. I spoke here in Cleveland multiple times in schools here, talking to students about staying in school and staying away from negative trends. I went on from those 3 years and running a multi-million-dollar nonprofit to go on to start the Montel Williams Show, which, different than most people would, most people don't know this, I owned the show and licensed it to CBS. So we had a 50-50 partnership on the show. I'm the last person in television history, along with Oprah Winfrey, to have a contract that is 100% creative control. I controlled every guest, every person, and every word that went on that show. That's the reason why that show stayed on the air for 17 years and I'm an Emmy Award winner. But I went on after that. My show stopped. The entire time I did my show, I was one of the only people in this country that made sure that every year when there wasn't a war, back before we all got involved in I support the troops, remember, I graduated from boot camp when people spit on the ground because of the uniform I wore. So long before it became vogue, I've been a board member of Fisher House, which is the #1 charity of this, for soldiers in this country today. I have been as active and vocal on veterans issues as I possibly can, and whether they give me credit for it or not, it was this mouth that forced the Senate and the Congress to go in there and sign that bill to give our veterans what they deserve, which is the $17 billion, which isn't even close to enough. So, and right now, I have been working for the last 4 years diligently on research to help impact traumatic brain injury. I'm one of the founders of a company that right now is working on a medical device that has a contract with the federal government that is going to attack and help to solve some of the issues that our soldiers are faced with who come back with traumatic brain injury and PTSD. I took a company public in June to do this. So I'm not saying all this to brag, but I'm saying all this to say to you that it was that one person who told me I couldn't, who now made me understand that there's nothing I can't do. So what happens? I get diagnosed with MS. So rather than be like everyone else who wants to listen to what a doctor has to say and tell you how you will be with MS, I decided I'm going to figure out everything there is to know about MS. So I have funded research around the world, talked to, visited with, sit down with some of the top doctors on this planet and picked all their brains, and guess what I found out? After I started talking to them, I talked about 12 of them, there are 12 different opinions. So guess what? If they're, and I don't say this disparagingly, but if doctors were God, none of us would be sick. If they were so smart, there would be no illness. They're human beings like us, and they have to process the information that they get, okay? And sometimes they don't process it correctly. And I started figuring that out because that first diagnosis, I was told by a doctor looked me in the face and said to me, Montel, you're going to have to stop your show. You're going to have to change your life. You're not going to be able to do these things, too stressful. He basically told me, go home and die. And I was like, homeboy, you don't know who you're talking to. Because instead of that, I went home and tried to find out everything I could to impact my illness. And so what have I done? I've changed my diet completely. I eat differently than anybody on this planet. I exercise every day, not 3 days a week, 1 day off, every day. That's what keeps my legs moving. 2 hours before I came here, I was over in that gym, moving these legs around, making sure I could remind this brain of how to get to them. I make sure every day I spend 2 hours on my illness. Every day. It's not a chore. It's what keeps me standing here before you, because if I had listened to that doctor who diagnosed me, he told me I would be in a wheelchair in 4 years. That would have been 2004. I went back and saw another doctor, one of the top doctors in this country. In 2007, he said, Montel, you will be in a wheelchair in a year. Really? And how come I'm not? I'm not special. I'm not. I'm just pointed and directed and understand that the more I put in to my illness, the more I'm going to get out of it. So I wanted to come in and speak, and I'm running out of time real quick because I think what we have to talk about before this clock runs out on me is how do we translate this to everyone else? Well, if you listen to the news today and this morning like I was before I came over here, we do a really good job in this reality-based attitude that we have of fear-mongering to make sure we can keep you as afraid as you can be. But again, no truth to that. We're all fired up all day long. Leave here right now, turn on the news, on any channel, there'll be within 3 minutes, Ebola story. Ebola found in New York. Oh my God, a man has Ebola in New York. Oh, Ebola, it's running across the world. Oh. Okay, look. If we cut through the garbage and listen to the truth, the reason why Ebola has been around for 70 years and has stayed primarily in third world countries is because it is the disease of the poor. When you are hydrated, you are eating and living in a functional society where we take care of the basic needs, it will be close to impossible for this thing to spread like Outbreak or like some movie. But we, all day long, allow our news media to make you as afraid as you can be. Well, you know what you really should be afraid of? Last year, 53,000 people died in the United States of America from influenza and the pneumonia. Influenza, the flu. That's 138 people a day. We've had 2 people, 1 person die in the United States. And you act like the whole country wants to spend every penny to solve that? Let me tell you why I'm so adamant on this. Because folks, right now in America today, 7 of 10 deaths are caused by chronic illness. 7. 133 million people have at least 1, and 60% of them have 2. Okay? So that's 100 million people with 2. America is looking like a railroad station right now. There's 1 train coming down the track this way. It's called chronic illness. Okay? Again, when over a third of this nation is suffering from a chronic illness which will never stop, and out of them, 1/3 of them have limitations every day because of their chronic illness. Guys, I want you to look at this. That's that train going this way. Coming this way, in less than 4 years, there's another train. That train is called the lack of doctors and nurses. By the year 2020, it's estimated in this country, we will be short 800,000 nurses. By 2020, depending on who you read, we will be short anywhere from 50,000 to 400,000 doctors. Now listen to me. I don't care about Republican, Democrat at all. I was a Republican for most of my life in the military. I've been assigned independent, and I vote that way on issues only, now and forever. Anybody who says a word out of their mouth to get elected about chronic illness or about our medical system and say that we got a way to fix this, they are lying to you guys. Remember we were hearing about doling out medical care and rationing out medical care? In 4 years, this country will be rationing medical care because there are not enough doctors to provide it. And like that table back there and the table back there, all the students, could you guys raise your hands? How many of you are studying right now to be a doctor? Raise your hands. How many of you are studying right now to be a nurse? Raise your hands. How many of you are studying right now to be an engineer? Raise your hand. How many of you are studying right now to, you see what I'm saying? This is America. Now, all the garbage you're going to hear in the next 2 weeks about the problems really facing us, I'm sorry I'm out of time, because the truth is, wake up. Wake up. Everything you hear on the news each day is, to me, nothing but fodder to keep you salaciously engaged in garbage. When you want to hear some truth, start looking at it yourself, because that freight train's coming, folks. And when they hit and collide, woe be it to us. There is something we can do. I'm out of time. The idea of owning your own footprint, it takes me 5 minutes to go up online and read 3 articles about MS every day. Read them. Find out what your illness is and do something. I mean, I say this gentleman right here, I don't even know you, sir, but I would say, how much, are you exercising 3 days a week?
Yes.
Perfect. Or are you watching your diet?
Should be.
Okay, that's cool. You're younger, exercising.
Yes.
How many days a week?
5.
5? Exercising. 6? 7. That's good. All right, so we see these guys. These are okay, now be honest. The rest of the room, raise your hand if you exercise more than 3 days a week. Okay, so that's the rest of the room, and right now I have 1/3. So I got approximately 1/3 of this room exercises more than 3 days or 3 days a week, okay? The rest don't. And I'm sorry, in about 5 years, you guys will be the ones that everybody's looking at as being a drain on our system. And you already see what this country does when they try to separate you for being responsible for a problem. I can't say thank you enough. I got to thank you guys because you kept me to time. It's impossible, but thank you. I would love, I'm here for questions.
We can do the Q&A in a second. Mr.
Yes, sir.
Montel Williams, thank you so much,
Thank
sir.
you, sir. Thank you.
You know, the script says today we're enjoying a Friday Forum featuring Montel Williams, but we're really enjoying a Friday Forum featuring Montel Williams. It's great to have you here. Thank you for sharing your passion and your life. We encourage you all to formulate your questions for Mr. Williams now and ask that your questions be brief and to the point. We welcome all of you here at the City Club and those joining us via our primary media partner, IdeaStream, that's 90.3 WCPN, WVIZ PBS, and 104.9 WCLV, or one of the many other radio stations across the region and country that carry City Club programs. Television broadcasts of the City Club are made possible by Cleveland State University and PNC. Our live webcast is supported by the University of Akron. Next Friday, October 31st, the City Club will host a panel discussion entitled Turning the Tide on Sexual Assault. For more information about our upcoming and past forums, please visit us online at cityclub.org. We welcome guests at tables hosted by the Cleveland Clinic Celebrate Sisterhood program. Yay. Yay. Cleveland State University and Medical Mutual. Thank you very much for your support. We also welcome students today from Baldwin Wallace University Scholars Program and John Hay Early College. Could the students please stand to be recognized, please? Student participation was made possible by a generous gift from the Jeffrey David Epstein Memorial Fund. We thank you very much for your support. Today's program is also presented in collaboration with Celebrate Sisterhood, a program of the Cleveland Clinic. We thank you. And now it's time for our traditional Q&A with our speaker. We welcome questions from everyone, including guests. Holding our microphones today are Marketing and Outreach Specialist Kirsten Pianka and Administrative Assistant Jackie Pawali.
And Dan, before you do the first question, can I just say one thing?
Yes.
One more thing. To the students, I also want to make sure you don't walk out of here thinking in any way, shape, or form I am downplaying the fact that you are getting an education in this society today. I was just asking about doctors and nurses and engineering to prove a point. But these guys need to be applauded for the fact that they are in school here. So I'm so sorry.
Yeah. Let's take our first question, please.
Mr. Williams, you made reference at the end of your talk today to the shortages of physicians and nurses.
Yes, sir.
And certainly that is going to be quite clear as the Complete Affordable Care Act, what the Republicans call Obamacare, comes into full effect. There is one problem, though, with the Obamacare, and that is the difficulty in obtaining the uncertainty of the insurance exchanges. Now, under Medicare, which those of us who are over 65 are automatically in, we have no problem at all. We simply select our physician, and we don't have to go through any kind of exchange of any kind. What is your thoughts about expanding so-called Obamacare to include the important provisions of Medicare, which make it possible for everybody to be covered automatically when they reach age 65?
Wow. It's a big one, sir. And it's a big one because, as you said, the so-called Obamacare. Well, let's call it what it is. It's called the Affordable Care Act. If I were to walk out this room and walk out on the streets of Cleveland right now and stop 45 people out there on that street and I ask them, would you vote for the Affordable Care Act or would you vote for Obamacare? 90% will say they'll vote for the Affordable Care Act because they don't even read it and they don't know what it is. But you read it and you understand that whether it be Obamacare, Romney Care, I don't care whose name's on it, the doctors don't exist. You will not have a doctor to see. This isn't Obamacare that's done this. The paucity of doctors, the 800,000 lack of nurses is because for the last 15 years in this country, we are no longer funding nurses the way we could and should have. Congress has cut 3 payments to nurses that would help them get through their second round of training. Those have been cut 8 or 9 years ago. Doctors are aging out. And unfortunately, because we have not enticed a generation to be interested in taking care of anybody but themselves, there won't be a doctor for you. So I would love to be able to comment on Obamacare, but from my perspective, and I'll say it this way, Dracula's gone in 2 years, and the same problem without doctors is going to be here when he's gone. So he has nothing to do with the fact that you're not going to be able to see a doctor. Unfortunately, 4 years from now, everyone's weight is going to go up, and nothing's going to change it. And let's also remember, right this minute, there is a repatriation of Indian and Chinese scholars from this country. No one in the country wants to talk about it. No one, because we're so happy that we don't even want to figure out how to deal with immigration. So what are we doing? We're bringing people into this country, allowing them to get 7, 8 years of degrees from universities to be doctors, only to be called home by their Chinese government. Go to Harvard. Go by Penn State. Go up to any Ivy League school right now and stand on the street and watch the students as they go to class. You no longer see America. You don't. I think now this year's enrollment in almost all the Ivy League schools, they have literally for the first time started institutionalizing reverse discrimination because they are keeping Chinese and Indian students out because we don't have enough Americans applying. That's the problem, sir. Obama didn't have anything. He's gone 2 years. I mean, I say it this way. It's a terrible thing to say, and I won't. I hope I answered that anyway, because I mean, from my perspective, Obamacare has nothing to do with it. You can call it whatever you want, but the problem still exists. Anybody else?
I just had one simple question. In the 3rd grade, you said you misspelled the word wrapped, right?
Yep.
And that strived you to do what you did this year.
Well, I misspelled the word rap. I spelled it as if it was raped.
Okay,
So therefore, this woman looked me in the face and said, as a black male, I only have one thing on my mind, and that's the reason why I would not be successful.
Okay, my question was, what if you would have spelled the word right, how do you think your life would have panned out if you would have spelled the word right?
If I had spelled the word right, I would be in the White House. And I should say, if you read my high school yearbook, I graduated from high school, I'll give it up. I graduated from high school in 1974. My class voted me most likely to be the President of the United States in 1996. Yes, ma'am. Oh, you have one? Oh, here's one over here. So, oh, over here. Yes, ma'am.
Andrea Hooks, Cleveland State University,
Yes, ma'am.
representing the Presidential Students Ambassadors. You touched on at the end of your speech about STEM students, and Alexandria from Sisterhood has done a great job connecting us. But what do we do, like my friend Kwame and Vernon, how do we reach out to our students in our community? How do we make that connection? How do we make that activation to get them aggressively wanting to come to Cleveland State to be STEM students?
Here's the $5, okay? I wanted that question in some way, shape, or form. You know why? Because the first thing we have to do, we got to stop with STEM. STEM needs to be changed back to another word called STEAM. Why don't we go science, technology, engineering, arts, and math? Let me explain something to you. I'm a musician. I started in the first grade playing the trumpet. Then I went from the trumpet to the bass. I learned music. I study music. I'm an artist. I paint. I write. I write stories. I do things. The artistic side of my mind is 10 times more important than the engineering side of my mind. But guess what? Why? Because it makes me look at things differently. In the last 4 months, I've taken a company public. I'm the reason why that company went public. I'm one of the founders of this company. And in 4 months, this company has a market cap that's almost ridiculous. I'm going to do this again and again and again because people are bringing me their products, their engineering products, recognizing that I have an eye that they don't have. They haven't been trained in. We're getting ready to ruin American education. We keep sending kids to school and don't let them play. Don't let them release energy. Don't give them something else to think about. It's the reason why we have a generation that doesn't want to do anything but play. Because you didn't let them play as a child at all. I was best actor in my school. I did plays in my school. I performed, but I was also an engineering student. Do you get it? That was helping my engineering. That's what formed this brain. So STEM alone is not good enough. And I'm working directly with the National School Board right now on this. I don't know if you guys know this, but I'm working directly with the National School Board. 3 weeks ago, I was responsible for getting the motion picture 12 Years a Slave in every high school across the country as part of the national curriculum. But let me explain something to you. Most people think, oh, there you go, black person trying to make us talk about black stuff again. No. 12 Years a Slave was one of the most important motion pictures that aired in this country last year. And it's not because it made people understand what it was like to be a black person being enslaved in America. It's not. That movie viscerally touched people to make them think about a topic that is here now, bigger than it was. If the estimates are right, that at any point in time in the South, in the United States, we had somewhere between 30,000 and 45,000 slaves. And over the period of time, probably 100 million people went through that. Right now, today, in this world today, your generation and your generation is affected more by slavery than any generation before you. There are more slaved children between the ages of 6 and 19 in the world today than there were slaves in the United States. We have more young women in prostitution and being held around the globe. So why did I want this movie to be there? I want this generation to understand what slavery is about and to do something. And unless they see it, they're not going to do it. So I'm going to do the same thing when it comes to STEM and STEAM. I'm on a mission to get arts back because arts are an important part of brain development. And if we don't do that, we will be where we are right now. What are we, number 22 in education in the world? Let's start sliding down to 30. I'm happy to do that. We number 30. Be proud. Yes, ma'am. Right there, that lady right there. Oh. Get her, can you get her microphone? Or there's one over there. Yes, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Ebony Kimbrough, and we can all detect the passion in your voice, and that states courage, but what exactly do you want to leave behind, like your legacy? What do you want to trail so that people always remember you? What do you want to do?
You know, be absolutely honest with you. I don't care if anybody ever remembers I was even here. It has, I can't be more honest about this. The celebrity portion of what I do is the least important thing of what I do. The most important thing, I would rather die and know that 50 years later somebody said that Montel Williams was involved in changing the way science approaches brain science forever. When I die, I want people to understand that Montel Williams created a business that's going to change the way fuel is developed in the world. I'm working on a project right now with a company, it's called Food for Health. I'm going to change the way food is delivered worldwide. Why? I'm working with a company right now that has figured out a way to completely eliminate the water molecule out of biological food processes. So by taking the water molecule out, what does that do? It renders a product completely oxidative free. When it's oxidation free, there's no spoilage. We right now have a product in the marketplace, food product, that has a 20-year shelf life. I can take food, process it, and have it stored for 20 years. So for me, when you say legacy, it's not important. What I'm hoping that I impart maybe in you and the students that are here, something really important. I didn't even say it during speech, and I'll say it to you right now. No one even knows where this quote came from, and I love this quote. It's one of the best in the world, right? Write this one down and keep this on your refrigerator. You guys, if you guys put it in your book, because this is really important. The quote is, when you're looking in a mirror, you're looking at the problem. When you're looking in a mirror, you're looking at the problem. Got that part written down? When you're looking in a mirror, you're looking at the problem. But you're also looking at the solution. So pay attention to the solution. And that right there, I'm telling you, every decision you make in life, just think about that quote. Look in the mirror. Think about what the problems might be. Answer yourself while you're in the mirror what the solutions are. And then get ready to start your day. I go to bed every day of my life. I've been doing this now for 19 years. I used to write it down on a piece of paper. I don't write it down anymore because I don't have to. Before I go to sleep, and I know I'm going to sleep, I say one question. What did I do today that's worth talking about tomorrow? What did I do today that's worth talking about tomorrow? If I can come up with 3 things that I did today that's worth me sharing with someone tomorrow, maybe already this morning, there was a woman that was coming down the elevator with me. Her bag dropped on the floor. You know, she was a little rumpled. She really didn't want to even say hi to me, but I stopped. I helped her pick up all of her stuff, helped her out that door. That woman didn't say thank you and didn't look at me. But guess what? I didn't react. I said, "So, have a nice day." That was something I did today for her. So that's one of my 3. I got 2 more coming. I'll write them down. Then tomorrow morning when I'm standing in that mirror and I'm looking at the problem, I also can look back and tell myself at the beginning of the day, Montel, you did 3 things yesterday though. So guess what? I start my day with a win and a victory rather than look at my day as being something I have to be afraid of. I already won. So when I walked out the door this morning, I won. Now this is right. I got to figure out what I'm going to win for tomorrow. If you can put that in your psyche, that's also what will help keep you going when the times are tough. And for me, you know, times were so tough. If you read my first book on MS, which was Climbing Higher, times were so tough with me 14 years ago, I attempted to take my life twice. I'm not proud of it. Got snatched back into reality. Because truthfully, I would not have been living up to my own expectation of myself had I done so. And it was really the loser's way out. And the only way for me to win was to stay and struggle. And guess what? It's been the best struggle of my life.
Praise the Lord.
Thank you. I don't know how come we can't get this lady. She had her hand up for 15 minutes. Just stand up. Just stand up and just start. Just tell me, what is what?
Welcome to Cleveland.
Thank you for having me.
I met you many years ago at NAPI.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi. I met you many years ago at NAPI.
NAPI is National Association of television producing executives.
And you
Yes, ma'am.
still look great.
Well, thank you.
But question, you talked about the shortage of physicians in the States. Do you think they're regulated due to insurance and the FDA? Do you think that's part of the problem?
No, some of the, well, I got to tell you something. We have two, again, I told you about the two freight trains coming in two different directions. We have chronic illness and we have lack of doctors and nurses. But we also have two more freight trains coming down the path. And and this goes back to the first thing I said in the speech. We are living right now in a time that is the most salacious, most narcissistic, selfish, reality-based country that is on this planet. We have politicians who come on TV who don't care at all about you. None. They're all worried about getting elected in 2 weeks, and they could care less what you think, what you say. Go ask them a question and see if they repeat your answer. They don't. They could care less. It's all about them. And how do I know this? You can go back 15 years in this country. 15 years ago, we had less than 30% of the Congress and Senate was worth over $1 million. If you go back 20 years ago, you had less than 11% worth over $1 million. Now you have 70% worth over 5. Who are they working for? You didn't increase their check. I don't know any state that said increase the pay of a senator or a congressman. They all get the same amount. Now, how are they worth $5 million? Good investments? No. Oh, yeah. Not no, yeah. Because they put Martha Stewart in jail for what they do every day. And you don't say a word about it. And wait, watch this. Right now, I don't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat. I watched the news last night. It's saying right now, Republicans have like a 14% approval rating. Democrats have about a 29% approval rating. But every one of these pigs is going to get reelected. And you're going to put them there. And complain about, I'm not picking on you, but I'm just saying, and complain about Obamacare. Yeah, I mean, you can complain about Obamacare, complain, but we don't do a thing. The same person that's going to stand before you in 2 weeks and stump a speech in this town, the first thing any one of you should do is look up their net wealth. If they've been in office for 5 years, there is no way their net wealth should have increased by 500%. But that's okay. Y'all go ahead and believe them. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Rosalind Mizell, and I noticed you talked a lot about getting students encouraged to be doctors and nurses and engineers. And yes, it's a good idea to start like with the public and at school, but what do you propose that we're supposed to do about their families, the lives at home? Because a lot of times students, I can relate to this, they don't think about being doctors and nurses and engineers because they're told at home that's not what you're supposed to be. That's not what you're going to be able to do. It starts at home.
Who told you that?
Not me personally, but no, not me personally, but it happens a lot. And a lot of my friends, they don't think that a doctor is for me because that's not what they've been raised up to be. So what do you propose that we do about that?
That's what this whole story was about, that I hope you could try to take away. When I told you about the fact that somebody looked me in the face and judged me based on the color of my skin and tried to predict what I would be, they had no right to define me, right? So this is the toughest one of all. And I'm going to tell you this straight up because you got friends sitting at the table, you guys got friends over there. You got a choice. Let me ask, what's this? This is a good one. Anybody in the room over the age of 40, you're the only ones who get to answer this question, okay? Over the age of 40. How many of you in the room over the age of 40 right now are in touch with your best friend from high school? Really? Y'all listen. Okay, well, the point I was going to try to make is that no, I mean, look, with me, it's really terrible because I just say it this way. It's not that you turn your back on anybody. Any one of your friends who has your same ideals, you should embrace and have them be the people that you spend time with. But because the bottom line is there's no one out there that can help you understand inside of you, you know you can succeed. I can tell you that till you're blue in the face. If you're not going to believe it, there's nothing I'm going to do to help you. But what I can do is try to help you get around other people of like mind so that you don't have one of those numbnuts telling you, oh, you can't be no doctor, oh, you shouldn't be no this. Because you know what? Most of the time, those people who are saying you can't be and you shouldn't just want you to stay in their same predicament that they're in. They don't want to see you succeed. So it's a tough one. I will tell you this, it's never bothered me. Right now, I would tell you I probably can count the number of people I would call a friend on one hand. And I thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, today at the City Club of Cleveland, we've been enjoying a Friday forum featuring Montel Williams. Thank you very much, Mr. Williams. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Our forum is now adjourned.